So a public policy can be very good, but if people are already fed up with all the policies which have been implemented a few years ago, then it may fail. Policy alienation can be seen as a person who cannot identify with the public policy he or she has to implement. For instance, a teacher has to implement a new educational reform and thinks that this is bad for the students, or it's bad for society, or he or she does not have any freedom in executing that policy. So it's about feeling alienated by the policy you have to implement. The first main problem is that there's a constant flow of change. So it's reform after reform after reform. So a new minister comes, a new cabinet comes, a new state secretary comes, and he or she wants to have a new policy. And the second problem is that those public professionals feel that the values of certain policies are not always aligned with their own values. An example would be a public policy focused on cutting costs in healthcare, while, for instance, a physician wants to have the best care possible. So, and then we have a trade-off between, on the one hand, efficiency, so lowering costs. On the other hand, we have healthcare quality. And the third problem is that many public policies focus on quantifiable targets instead of more holistic views of quality. A prime example would be the number of tickets a police officer writes. Researchers, for instance, are evaluated based on the number of publications they write. It's not the quality of the publications or, for the police officers, subjective safety or objective safety, but it's something which you can measure, which you can count. And the problem that public professionals have with that is that they think not everything in their world, in their job can be counted. I think those three reasons I mentioned are one of the main reasons why people develop policy alienation. So I developed a more historical perspective on the alienation concept and how that could be applied to public policies. However, policies do not develop in a vacuum. Especially in education, people already have a lot of fatigue with all the policies that exist. So in general, they are already alienated from public policy. So if a new policy comes in, it's not enough to only study that particular policy, but also to look at the surroundings. I would say in education, especially higher education, maybe also primary education, healthcare and social security. There's three sectors I would say that. There's a lot of research already done, and most of the time quite high alienation found. Job satisfaction, resistance to change, and turnover or stopping with the profession, I would say, are three important consequences of high policy alienation. We expected that giving people influence, also in change management sees that we should give people a lot of influence, and that will have by definition a positive effect on acceptance. But we saw that it's more important to develop more meaningful policies. My first solution would be measure the degree of policy alienation quantitatively and qualitatively before you really implement it full scale. My second solution would be try to develop better policies, which are more meaningful for clients and society. Third one would be communicate better what the effects are of certain policies. And the fourth one would be give people freedom to adapt the policy toward the circumstances of their clients, of course, within the limits of the policy. Less alienation, more acceptance. Also professionals who feel valued by society. Teachers who feel, okay, they are really listening to me. So it's not always about making objectively better policies. It's also, even if they ask you what you think about it and later on they do not take it into account, but with argumentation you already view that you're being taken more seriously than they just develop a policy without your knowledge.